In the summer of 1944, the Allied forces had stormed the beaches of Normandy, beginning the largest invasion in human history. Just 25 days after D-Day, the German Western Front faced unprecedented pressure. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, a seasoned veteran who had commanded armies across Poland, France, and the Soviet Union, observed the catastrophic unraveling of German defenses firsthand. Despite the Reich's propaganda claiming strength and resilience, von Rundstedt understood the reality. The Western Front was collapsing. He attended briefings with Hitler and the German High Command, witnessing the tension between political orders and battlefield realities. The stark contrast between the expectations of distant headquarters and the actual conditions on the front lines created a dangerous disconnect. Soldiers under von Rundstedt's command were exhausted. Supplies were dwindling, and reinforcements were insufficient. The rigid insistence on holding territory at all costs prevented flexible defensive strategies, leaving German forces vulnerable. Von Rundstedt's experiences during these weeks revealed a broader truth about military leadership. Honesty from commanders is often the first casualty when ideology and ego dominate decision-making. In this voiceover, we explore the grim reality faced by one of Germany's top generals, the challenges of managing a collapsing front, and the critical decisions that would shape the remainder of the war in Europe. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt had earned a reputation as a professional and disciplined soldier. By the summer of 1944, he had seen the rise and fall of empires, the victories across Europe, and the devastation of the Eastern Front. Yet, nothing prepared him for the shock of D-Day. In late June, von Rundstedt made a statement to the German High Command that would end his career. 4 simple words that conveyed the inevitable truth of Germany's situation. These words, spoken with honesty and clarity, reflected not only his military assessment, but also a profound understanding of the broader strategic collapse. In this section, we examine the context of that statement, the exhaustion of German forces, the superiority of Allied logistics and air power, and the flawed decision-making at the highest levels of command. We explore von Rundstedt's relationship with other senior generals, including Field Marshal Rommel, and how differing opinions on strategy contributed to the indecision that plagued the German response. The tension between reality on the ground and Hitler's rigid directives illustrates the tragic consequences of ignoring professional military advice. Von Rundstedt's courage in speaking the truth, despite knowing the personal and political risks, highlights the ethical challenges faced by commanders in wartime. This voiceover reveals how one statement encapsulated the fate of the Western Front, a warning that went tragically unheeded. In the weeks following the Normandy invasion, the German High Command was consumed by strategic debates. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, alongside Rommel and other senior commanders, sought practical solutions to repel the Allied advance. These discussions often took place under the shadow of Hitler's increasingly erratic decisions. Hitler demanded rigid defenses and refused to allow tactical withdrawals, even when commanders clearly saw the risk of encirclement and collapse. Von Rundstedt's experience highlights the clash between professional military judgment and political interference. He attended secret conferences with Hitler, where the emperor's paranoia and obsession with victory overshadowed practical considerations. The debates over counterattacks, reinforcements, and defensive lines were critical, yet they were hindered by the fear of opposing Hitler's orders. This voiceover explores the tension between frontline realities and high command directives, showing how strategic the Normandy campaign was not only a strategic turning point, but also a human tragedy. Soldiers on both sides faced unimaginable stress, shortages, and relentless combat. Field Marshal von Rundstedt witnessed the strain on German troops firsthand, knowing that the collapse of the Western Front would cost countless lives. Around the same time, tensions within Germany reached a breaking point. The July 20th assassination attempt on Hitler, although ultimately unsuccessful, reflected the desperation and moral conflict among Germany's military elite. Von Rundstedt's position was delicate. He had to navigate loyalty, personal ethics, and professional responsibility. This voiceover delves into the personal and professional pressures faced by commanders like von Rundstedt during this period. It examines how the refusal to heed honest military advice magnified human suffering and contributed to strategic failure. We explore the ethical dilemmas of high-ranking officers caught between obedience and truth, highlighting how one man's decision to speak candidly could have altered the course of events had it been acted upon. By understanding these human dimensions, we gain insight into the complexity of wartime leadership and the cost of ignoring experience and judgment. As the Western Front crumbled, von Rundstedt witnessed the inexorable advance of Allied forces across France and into Germany. The weeks following Normandy exposed the consequences of poor strategic planning, rigid command structures, and the failure to value professional assessments. Von Rundstedt's 4 words, delivered months earlier, had been prophetic. In the final months of the war, German forces were increasingly disorganized, morale collapsed, and civilian populations suffered under bombardment and occupation. This voiceover reflects on the enduring lessons from von Rundstedt's experience, the importance of honesty in leadership, the dangers of political interference in military strategy, and the moral responsibility of commanders to speak truthfully, even when unwelcome. Through the lens of the Western Front, Normandy, and the final retreats into Germany, we explore how one man's candid assessment highlighted the inevitability of defeat and the human cost of ignoring expert judgment. This narrative underscores a pivotal moment in military history, reminding us that courage, honesty, and professionalism remain essential, even in the darkest hours of war. Parenthetical. By the summer of 1944, the German war effort in Western Europe was reaching a critical breaking point. Just 25 days after the monumental Allied invasion of Normandy, the German High Command faced a crisis of confidence, leadership, and strategy. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, one of Germany's most senior and respected military commanders, had witnessed victories and defeats across Europe, from the lightning campaigns in Poland to the rapid conquest of France and the brutal battles on the Eastern Front. Yet nothing in his long and distinguished career had prepared him for the shock and devastation he now observed in Normandy. The Allied landings had not only breached the Atlantic Wall, but had also exposed fundamental weaknesses in the German defensive strategy. Supply lines were overextended, troops were fatigued, and critical reinforcements were delayed or diverted to other fronts. Von Rundstedt understood the grave implications immediately. The Western Front, a symbol of German military might, was unraveling. In the days and weeks that followed, he would confront the stark reality of what was at stake, and he would deliver a message that no one in power wanted to hear. Von Rundstedt's assessment to the German High Command was brutally honest, succinct, and historically significant. In just 4 words, he encapsulated the inevitable collapse of Germany's position in Western Europe. This statement, often overshadowed by larger strategic narratives, demonstrated not only his clarity of vision, but also his courage in speaking truth to authority. A dangerous endeavor under Hitler's increasingly autocratic and rigid leadership. The context surrounding his warning was complex. Hitler, driven by ideology and a refusal to acknowledge strategic setbacks, demanded unwavering defense and absolute loyalty, regardless of the tactical situation on the ground. Military commanders were expected to implement directives that often defied practical reasoning, and those who dared to speak candidly risked not only their careers, but also their lives. Yet von Rundstedt, guided by decades of battlefield experience and a profound sense of duty, chose honesty over appeasement. His statement reflected the culmination of careful observation, intelligence reports, and first-hand knowledge of troop morale and operational capabilities. It was a message rooted in reality, not hope or propaganda. In exploring von Rundstedt's final warnings, we must consider the broader operational environment of the time. The Normandy campaign placed immense strain on German forces. The Allies possessed overwhelming air superiority, advanced logistical networks, and a capacity to rapidly deploy reinforcements and armor where needed. German commanders, despite skill and experience, were hamstrung by inflexible orders and a fragmented chain of command. Von Rundstedt and Field Marshal Rommel, another senior commander, often clashed with distant headquarters over how to respond effectively. Rommel advocated for mobile defenses and counterattacks designed to disrupt the Allies before they could consolidate their beachheads. Von Rundstedt, while more cautious, recognized the necessity of realistic planning and the limitations of available resources. The tension between these perspectives exemplified the broader struggle within the German command. Professional judgment versus political ideology. Practical strategy versus blind loyalty. The weeks following D-Day also coincided with profound internal crises within the German military. The failed assassination attempt on Hitler on July 20th of 1944 highlighted the growing desperation and ethical conflict among senior officers. Von Rundstedt, navigating these turbulent waters, had to maintain professional authority while confronting moral dilemmas that questioned the very legitimacy of orders coming from Berlin. His warnings were not just strategic recommendations, they were moral imperatives. He understood that continuing to follow unrealistic directives would result in catastrophic loss of life, both among soldiers and civilians, and would hasten Germany's defeat. His voice, rooted in experience, reason, and conscience, stood in stark contrast to the increasingly disconnected and ideological pronouncements of Hitler and his inner circle. The human cost of ignoring von Rundstedt's warnings was enormous. As the Allies advanced from the Normandy beaches into the French countryside, German forces were repeatedly encircled, outmaneuvered, and destroyed in detail. Frontline troops suffered from inadequate supplies, exhausted leadership, and the psychological toll of fighting a war they could not possibly win under existing directives. Von Rundstedt's assessments, if heeded, could have mitigated some of these disasters, allowing for organized retreats, preservation of forces, and potentially fewer casualties. Instead, The rigid insistence on holding territory at all costs magnified the suffering and accelerated the collapse of the Western Front. His warning, delivered with precision and clarity, remained unheeded, a tragic testament to the consequences of sidelining honest military counsel in favor of ideology and personal ego. Beyond the battlefield, von Rundstedt's story provides enduring lessons for leadership, ethics, and decision-making in times of crisis. It reminds us that professional expertise, experience, and courage are indispensable in guiding complex operations, and that ignoring truth for convenience or fear can lead to disaster. Von Rundstedt's warnings illuminate a pivotal moment in history, when one man's honesty could have altered outcomes if it had been respected. This voiceover examines not only the operational details of the Normandy campaign and subsequent German retreats, but also the moral and psychological pressures that shaped decisions at the highest levels of command. Finally, von Rundstedt's legacy is one of integrity and realism. Despite his removal from command following his candid assessment, history has vindicated his judgment. His understanding of the strategic situation, his courage in speaking the truth, and his unwavering commitment to duty offer profound insights into military leadership and human responsibility. This documentary seeks to honor that legacy, exploring the critical moments, difficult decisions, and tragic consequences surrounding one of World War II's most consequential yet overlooked episodes. From the beaches of Normandy to the bunkers of the German High Command, von Rundstedt's story stands as a powerful reminder of the importance of honesty, professionalism, and moral courage in the face of overwhelming adversity. P.S. P. 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 P.